Tropic of Capricorn, Chapter 2 Deep Reflection. Rian had been half awake for almost an hour, but still her eyelids were closed. Like the other tribute children and youths who'd been selected for their supernatural gifts, she was permitted to wake up as slowly as she liked, to encourage the full recall of lucid dreams and astral travels. One of her appointed tasks, to be performed in the early hours of every morning, was to rouse herself from sleep to meditate for a short period of time upon a symbol or picture which defined the vision they wanted her to see in the dreams that followed. Sometimes she dreamed of precisely what they were looking for. At other times she seemed to see anything but the appointed vision. Often she saw what she herself most truly desired to see in the deepest recesses of her heart. This latter was usually her homeland in the Emerald Islands of the North. Her sweet, youthful mother, from whom she'd inherited abundant red hair and skin whiter than snow, and hard-working father, who'd given her a short, hot temper, rebellious spirit, and druidic gift with trees and fire. Her 6 older sisters, not a boy between them, as her parents cheerfully complained, would probably be married by now and busy working the land or caring for babies of their own. She hoped they had all found kind husbands, for it was a hard life they led on those wet and windy hills, and a happy marriage was the best way to survive it. Whilst the pain of separation was sharp as ever, Rian was frequently grateful to have been sent to the imperial city, especially when she knew it was wintertide in Albion. She was spared the hardship and privation they would surely face, but was sorry that the comfort she enjoyed could not be shared with them. Nobody lived in poverty or discomfort in the sacred centre, and her accommodation was more than merely pleasant, but truly luxurious by the standards of her homeland. She was never hungry or cold. Indeed, she was always either warm or very hot, and nor did she want for good clothes, a clean bed, or sweet oil to anoint her limbs and tame her hair. At other times, she missed both her loving family and the cool hills so badly that her entire body seemed to ache with grief, and the breath felt raw in her lungs. She remembered the howling wind which had bitten into her face and which she had so often run to escape, as if it were a friendly ghost. The snarling wolves she recalled as handsome herders of the abundant wild deer, which were so plentiful they raided her parents' vegetable patch on a regular basis, creeping ever closer as the young and tender buds emerged each spring. Her memory reached back to the muddy grey-green fields and endless towering trees with their owls and ravens, the shrubs and hedgerows that were home to wrens and pricklebacks, the mountain streams which are silver and playful in summer, but raged mud-red in winter, swelling to 10 times their size with rain that drove them like wild horses through the valley. All were in her bones and in her blood, as much as the spirited woodland creatures and delicate ferns and flowers which livened every glade. Oh, how it had rained! Rian hailed from one of the wettest places in the 8 kingdoms, and it was funny to think how she had longed for just a ray of hot sun to pierce the endless range of clouds on so many winter days. For the opposite now was true. Everyone here prayed for rain or a breath of cool wind, which never came. A cooling shower wasn't all she craved. Rian ached and pined for her beloved, a man 8 years her senior whom she had loved without ceasing for as long as she could remember. He had only ever seen her as a child, and in her heart of hearts she knew he would now be with another, surely her beautiful sister Caitlin, loveliest of the 7. The helpless sorrow of loss and regret carved a void in her being so deep it seemed the world could fall inside. Rian reached through space that she might gaze at the two of them with her practiced inner eye, cold and rational as her heart was warm and free. She did not fool herself. They were a good match, and he probably would have loved Caitlin anyway, even if Rian had stayed. Even if she had hypnotized him with the infinite charm of the seventh daughter and shown him the gift of secret fire. Men were strange creatures after all, not always preferring a witch's mysterious spell to the curve of a perfect breast or allure of a sparkling eye, even if the spell was strong. If ever they preferred it at all. She conjured up her sister's vivacious smile and graceful walk, the hair which tumbled to her waist and was also redder than the setting sun, but with an even greater shine. Beautiful Caitlin, quick to laugh and slower to anger than her younger sibling. Ah, Rian missed her too. The sweet medicine of love overcame her envy, and she wished the two of them well. She was young, after all, and her heart was not completely broken. Still, the tears fell, for she was sadder than ever that morning. The walls of her room seemed to echo her pain. The act of love was their haunting cry, a plaintive female voice, urgent and resounding, clear as the stream in summer, pointing to some hidden knowledge, as if it were inside her, unrecalled. Words from a song she had not yet heard. Rian was desperately lonely and cried often, for the cultivation of her gift involved leading a solitary life and totally discounted the possibility of romantic relationships. Not that Atlanteans were much given to romance in any case. Strange sexual experiments, perhaps, but not, as a rule, romance, for they lacked the emotional range and artistic temperament of more ordinary humans, being of a far more rational and scientific mindset. This, indeed, was the reason they needed tributes. To perform the astral enterprises they could no longer summon the energy, will, or desire for. Frequent were the mornings when Rian woke up with the feeling that a hollowed-out jar was where her soul should have been. Every day, in fact. Why was she so empty? How strange was this land where time had all but ceased, and thoughts replaced speech for much of the time. The immense psychic and intellectual gifts of the ruling race, having enabled them to make magic out of science, and, increasingly, science out of magic. One thing was for sure, if she ever made it back home, she'd have a pretty tale to tell about this place, so opposite in every way to windswept Albion. Everything here upended, as if in strange reflection of more earthly reality, as if it were another world entirely, shielded from the mortal coils with a magic so intense it would take thousands of years before ordinary humans could even imagine its possibilities. Her eyes were still closed against the small white-walled room and its haunting song. It was prettily decorated with exotic plants and crystals. Finely beaten copper vessels filled with the coldest of magical waters, and softly beating mechanical feathers helped to keep the raging climate at bay. The act of love. Rian ran her mind over the dream vision of the night before. This one had been for her alone, for she had dreamed deeply of him, and with all her might she wished to return to that dream, even if it meant never waking again. Caitlin had not been there, just him and the Holy Father. A magisterial shape-shifter, as was her earthly father. He had appeared as a great black and white sea bull, which swam close to the shore where she was standing. She, a tiny child again, eager to touch the smooth hard surface of its skin for one desperate moment. Why was it that she could ask no more than this, barely a glancing touch of the only thing she had ever really wanted? The longed-for dream had later given way to a vision of an unknown land, somewhere beyond the threshold of her present time frame, and marked by a shadow boundary line, behind which was only darkness, indicating where death would come to those who crossed it. Glistening waters merged into a deep blue sky, similar in hue to the seascapes of Atlantis, with a heat haze shimmering over the same sort of pure white columns they had here, only there they were fallen and broken, their glittering glory half hidden by soft green grass. Still they were dazzling in the sun. It was placed in the east, so many years hence, but still somehow ancient, another of time's mysterious broken records. Rian forgot her sorrow as she attempted to recall more of what she had seen, in particular the god of this land, who had been defined by a symbol she had been given to meditate upon the night before. More than a sign on the magical page, it also had a sound of its own, and this she brought to mind as well. Interesting, yes. She liked the sound of it. The word was somehow soothing and brought a sliver of relief to her anguish. She conjured it again more clearly, until eventually she said it out loud, and the walls of her room delivered a resounding echo of the same. This was surprising, jolting Rian from her usual depression and waking her quite fully in the process. Knowing she had seen and recalled what they wanted, she blinked open her eyes and yawned as she stretched, leaning up on one elbow. She circled her head a couple of times, and then climbed out of bed, still thinking about the land of Om. There had been a haughty golden god, she suddenly remembered, as she padded over to the largest copper basin and splashed cool water on her face. The exceptionally pure, oxygen-charged water had a vivifying effect which also conferred a delightful glow to her skin. "Ah," she said softly to herself, splashing it behind her neck and between her breasts. "Thank God for something that wasn't hot." Even though it was seated in a cross-legged position, the god of the land of Om was higher than a large house. She struggled to gain an accurate perspective on exactly how huge he was or would be. He was burnished gold all over, that was for sure, gleaming in the sunlight, and floating a foot-span from the earth as he somehow glided forwards whilst remaining seated. He was surrounded by unruly crowds of people and animals of every conceivable shape, size, and colour, tumbling out of the vast cavern mouth like a crazy and wild rushing river. Perhaps his people and their animals had been carrying him along somehow. The golden god had made an unusual gesture with his right hand, which Rian tried to replicate with her own. It felt good, but she didn't know why. Somehow the hand gestures were important, she mused thoughtfully. It was an interesting assignment, to be sure. She put on a simple tunic of fine white cloth, the standard attire for both women and men of all ranks, and nipped it at the waist with a copper-buckled belt with turquoise inlay, which denoted her position of seer. Her prettily woven sandals were made of a tough seaweed fibre they used instead of leather, plaited into slender ropes and adorned with seed pearls. She got pleasure from the simple task of dressing, which was far more enjoyable in the scrupulously clean and elegant imperial city than it was in the cold, muddy climes of the Emerald Islands, where people seldom even bathed. Rian chuckled to herself. Caitlin might have been prettier, but she could not be sweeter smelling. Rianne's smile broadened as she recalled the hectic dawn scrambles in the rough little house she'd grown up in. The lack of warm bathing water was one thing she certainly didn't miss about home, which she had to admit seemed almost barbaric in comparison with her present lodgings and morning ablutions. She snorted with laughter at the thought of her sisters trying to pull straw and insects out of their long, tangled hair, and imagined how they would marvel at the sight of her now, dressed more finely than the high priestess of Albion herself, the one who had blessed her journey. It had taken quite a while for her to become accustomed to the ultra-refined society of Atlantis. For one thing, quite unlike at home, everyone was oddly aloof and reserved, unchecked emotion being seen as a harbinger of doom through chaos. In a society where all could read minds, mental control and discretion were valued extremely highly, practically above all other qualities. Expressions of passion or strong emotions were regarded with such revulsion that they almost never occurred. Everyone was so rich and so clever that money had lost all meaning, and obvious indicators of rank were looked upon with distaste. Only Queen Amphitrite and King Poseidon were truly set apart from the rest by the manners of their dress, and the Queen alone wore coloured cloth. Even her multitude of sisters stuck to white and jewels of coral or pearl. This was not by any official mandate, but a mutually agreed upon respect of Amphitrite's regal status. Rion liked the white linen garments well enough. Very well, in fact. They were beautifully cut and pressed, and they helped keep off the sun. But now and again she hankered after a gown of turquoise green, knowing the colours of the Queen would perfectly suit her. Her striking red hair was considered an interesting feature, a rare splash of colour amongst a people with uniformly ink-black tresses. But every morning Rian tied it up and away from her neck and shoulders, for it was simply too hot to wear down. This set her apart again, for long flowing locks and braids, pinned only at the front and sides, were typically worn by everyone. She was not afraid of being judged for wearing hers differently, however, for small-minded attitudes to such things were unheard of, Atlanteans being deeply inclined towards scientific investigation and seldom moved by appearances. They were seldom moved by anything at all. Millennia of genetic alteration by the sorcerers and fastidious breeding had ensured that great physical beauty was very much the norm, to the point that unusual features were generally pleasing to an easily bored population. Rayan's red hair fell into this category, although she otherwise paled in comparison with the truly spectacular looks of the average imperial lady. Helen of Troy would be the last purebred of their line, although this was yet to be foreseen. Even more highly prized was Rian's powerful druidic gift, not only heralded by her foreign-looking appearance, but also strongly sensed by the naturally psychic imperial citizens who populated the governing centre. With penetrating minds and clinical eyes, they clearly perceived her capacity for inner vision, and the emotional depth which made possible her journeys into the subtle realms they'd long ago forgotten how to reach. The endless sun and pitiful sorrow, the arduous work and tortured longing, the strictest discipline and masterful training, the constant danger and relentless strangeness, closeness to the centre of the world's greatest empire, and unique position in the halls of high magic, had conspired to make Rian into a perfect fire girl. She was just as they wanted and needed her to be, hot as a mage's hearth for as long as the sorcerers would use her, capable of reaching the stars with her wondrous dream gaze. Rian's bedroom opened onto an octagonal open courtyard flanked by 7 other similar rooms, only 2 of which were occupied. A lunar month ago there had been 3, but the eldest of the female tributes had reached her 21st birthday and was granted passage home on one of the imperial merchant ships. She was bearing valuable gifts for her family, and would be given an armed guardian to travel with, and a deadly snake of Aries that would stay with the family to assure their ongoing safety. Of the two who remained, one was just 9 years old, her parents having died and given guardianship of the gifted child to the Atlantean priesthood. It would be some years before she could fully participate in portal travel, but as a permanent residence she had already been selected as the future High Priestess of all Atlantis. Her training was quite different to that undertaken by the others, as the sorcerers and courtiers groomed her for this mighty task. The second girl was unable to speak and considered too simple to be sent through the portal, although she was able to transmit some details of her dreams by the same mental telepathy which served as the main form of communication in the Imperial City.